and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. My guest this time is Lily Silverton, and Lily is a globally recognised speaker, writer and self-development expert. Her commitment to helping individuals and organisations prioritise more helpful ways of thinking and behaving has made her a leading figure in the wellness world. With trainings in behavioural change, stress management, positive psychology, mindfulness, mindset and life coaching, and applied neuroscience, she brings a unique and evidence-based approach. Through her signature framework, the Priorities Method, she cuts through the wellness cliches to empower people to navigate the chaos of modern life with more clarity, resilience and ease. Sounds great. Welcome to the podcast, Lily.
What a lovely introduction. Thank you, Emma. Lovely to be here.
So we're here to talk about your newest book, Prioritize This. I'm holding it up. I don't know why, because if people are listening, you won't even see this. But so the subtitle is A Practical Guide for Thriving in a World That Won't Slow Down. And that definitely spoke to me. And I'm sure it will speak to many people listening. Because my goodness, it just never does it? It only seems to be getting faster and faster and more overwhelming.
It does really feel that way. Yeah.
This is your second book/journal. The first one, The Priorities Method. Why did you decide to write this one? Was there anything that kind of, you talked a bit about procrastination mode, anything that's kind of tipped you over into starting this one?
So this one was on the cards for a very long time. It was actually, I'd been working on it before I published the Priorities Method journal. And I had a publisher who wanted to do both. And in the end, I went with creating the journal first on my own without a publisher, and then the book later. And the reason I did that largely was because my father was very unwell, and I didn't feel I had the resources emotionally, mentally, and so on to write the main big book. But I felt like I could do the journal, and I was ready to get that out there. And then I guess in terms of tipping from procrastinating to like actually getting it done, it was probably meeting the right agent and feeling really engaged and inspired by my agent to be like, okay, yes, this does, she was I'd met with lots of various agents, and she was the one who was like, no, this is a really good time, let's go. I was like, okay. And so then from then it was very quick to writing the book and getting it out there.
Okay, so we wouldn't have time to delve into every element of the book. So I was thinking we could kind of pull out a few of the chapters that I think certainly resonated with me, and again, I'm sure will resonate with people listening from kind of our particular audience. And those were the ones on stress, overwhelm, and procrastination, if that's okay. So maybe if we start with stress, because I think that's definitely for our kind of squeezed middle, that's the kind of, I think, the one that is really going to land with people. And I was so happy to see in the book that you talk about working with Sarah, is it McKay? Never know
McKay, yeah.
McKay, who I absolutely love and is completely brilliant.
Have you had her on the podcast?
Not yet, but she is on my hit list. But yeah, tell us a little bit then about this sort of bottom up, top down, outside in model, and then maybe we can talk about sits and sats.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. All the great topics. So Dr. Sarah McKay, for anyone who's listening who isn't familiar, is a neuroscientist, and she specializes in women's health. She's got really broad, incredible knowledge, but she does specialize within women's health and the changing brain as women go through their lifetimes. And she created this fantastic model called bottom up, top down, outside in. And I trained with her, and she very kindly gave me permission to reproduce it and use it for some of the framework in my book. And essentially it looks at the varying interventions that we can take for changing our brain's experience of the world and what's going on with us. So if it's bottom up, you're looking at physiological changes and physiological interventions. So an example there could be breath work or exercise. And top down is, of course, your mind. And so mindset changes. If we talk about sits and sats, we'll go into that. And then when you're looking at, what's my last one? Outside in, you're looking at external influences and factors. So perhaps your environment. So it could be, you know, from your social relationships to even the color of your wallpaper.
And also all of those things are kind of working together or not, as
all
the
of those
case may
things
be,
are
or
working
working
together or
against one
not
another.
at all times. You know, that our brains are influenced by these various factors that are coming at us or that we are creating. And it's how we can, how I've used her model is how we can use those as a framework to think, okay, what are the interventions that I can use? For example, if we'll stay with stress, it can be applied to so many areas, but if we'll stay with stress, what are the interventions that I can use, and what are the kinds of interventions that are going to work for me? Because a lot of what we see with stress intervention programs, for example, is that they are very prescriptive. And of course they are, because we've got to make sense of things and we've got to make it easy to understand. And especially with social media these days, you know, it's very easy to give people bite-sized, quick, universally applicable ideas. But the reality is that each of us is really, really different. We have different brains, we have different experiences, we have different thoughts, we have different memories that we're all bringing to our experience of a situation, for example, a stressful situation. And we're all going to respond to varying interventions in different ways. So I think there are some interventions that I've seen and that, you know, have incredible studies and lots of proof around them that are pretty universally effective generally, such as movement, exercise, moving your body in some sort of way. And that doesn't mean moving it in some sort of aesthetic way that looks good on Instagram. You know, it's none of that. It just means moving your body. But obviously, for some people, that is not possible. And then another intervention that seems to be incredibly robust in terms of studies is social connection. And it's one of the most overlooked interventions. And I've actually been speaking about this quite a lot this week in particular, because there was that Stephen Bartlett clip. I don't know if you saw.
I haven't seen the whole thing.
The Stephen Bartlett, and he talks about how he had a couple of glasses of wine and it ruined 3 days for him because his sleep was thrown and his cortisol was too high. He was tracking it. He couldn't even podcast properly and so on and so forth. And it really comes into this idea of like us over optimizing our lives and over optimizing our wellness and over obsessing about our wellness at the expense of things like social connection, you know, in terms of the studies and what makes the difference. Your relationships, positive relationships with other people, and that might include having a couple of glasses of wine now and then, are so effective at supporting long-term brain health and sort of the diseases of aging, if you think about Alzheimer's or dementia. So yeah, that's the model, and that's how we try to use it. So the idea is really to give people as many options as possible so that they can find and discover and try out the things that are going to work for them at that very moment in time. Because of course, as we all know, how we feel one morning might be completely different to how we feel the evening or even an hour later. You know, we shift and change, especially depending on external circumstances. And, you know, as you talk about that middling sandwich experience, you know, in a moment, things can change because your child needs one thing and then suddenly your parent needs something else. And I've been in that situation myself, with my father and my father being very ill and having young children. So I know how much things can shift and change and stress can suddenly come at you. So a lot of the stress chapter, a lot of the book full stop, but a lot of the stress chapter is about showing people and having them discover for themselves just how many things there are that they can do to support themselves. And it doesn't mean you're not going to get stressed, because first of all, stress is really helpful. It's humanized a lot, but also it's normal. And to pretend otherwise and to think that you can optimize your way out of stress, I think is deeply unrealistic.
Disingenuous. Yeah.
But to give people, to make them feel like, all right, can I swear?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, life is coming at me. Things are a bit shit. But what have I got? What can I do in this moment? What are the tools that I can use to help myself? And again, it doesn't mean that by helping myself, I'm going to feel completely fine. It just means that I'm going to feel like I'm holding my own hand and walking by my own side and doing something to support myself.
I always talk about sort of building your own bespoke toolkit. Like you say, it's sort of that pick and mix approach of like what works for you might not work for me, or, you know, for my best friend, and that and might not be realistic or sustainable. So it's like almost like, you know, make your own little stress survival survival pack. Like, what are the things that you've tried that you know are going to work and that you know you can actually fit into your kind of bonkers schedule, or, you know, that are achievable with the resources that you've got, the time that you've got, that feel good for you.
And as you say, like, it's so important having that toolkit, because in the moment of stress, because your brain has been, you know, you've got all sorts of stuff going on in your brain. I wouldn't say it's been hijacked, because that's apparently not quite correct, according to Sarah.
Feels like it sometimes.
There's a myth that we say about the brain where she's like, it's not true, doesn't get hijacked. But, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in there. So you want to know what your tools are, so that you don't have to think too much about what you need in that moment, in that same way that it's so lovely when you're stressed or when you're really exhausted that someone doesn't ask you what you want for dinner. They just give you a plate of scrambled eggs. You know, it doesn't need to be something fancy, but they just give you something without you having to think about it.
Taking one decision away from you.
Just take a decision away from the millions that we've got. So yeah, having that toolkit means those decisions as well, that sort of sense of overwhelm of, well, what can I even do, hopefully gets minimized a bit.
And then kind of coming back, I guess, to what you were just saying about, you know, the sort of the busyness of the brain and all of the sort of the thoughts and processes that go on in there. Let's talk about sits and sats, if we may, and explain what they are and how those kind of contribute to that sort of stress bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is sort of mindset coaching stuff 101. And sits are stress-inducing thoughts, and sats are stress-alleviating thoughts. So it all goes back into sort of what they call thinking errors and thinking skills, and these have long been identified by psychologists, and they're used within many frameworks. So within stress coaching, this is how we use them. And the idea is that we have thoughts in our mind which either increase or decrease our stress reaction.
Sort of turning the dial up or down.
Turning the dial up or down, exactly. So if we're looking at a sit, so something that might increase our stress, we might see something like catastrophizing, which I think people are pretty familiar with now. That's where we blow a thought out of proportion. And it's a very natural thing to do. We like to worry. We like to, our brain likes to prepare for the future. You know, it's very good at that. It's what's largely enabled us to thrive as a species, to survive for so long within our environment. However, particularly within our modern world and the frameworks in which we exist, a lot of the time that catastrophizing, that blowing something out of proportion and really thinking about the worst possible scenarios isn't very helpful. It's not what we need. It's not helping us move through a situation with more understanding. It's not helping us resolve something. It's just
going round and round the groove of
it's going round and round the groove. It's getting us more and more worked up. It means that perhaps we're not as likely to think about the other available, more resolvable or things that will help us resolve something more in a more helpful way. We're not able to access those thoughts as easily and so on. So we then look at how, if we're having those thoughts, how we could find a stress alleviating thought. So if the stress is being more induced, how can we find something that would alleviate it? And that's a sat. Mm-hmm. And so the matching sat would be, you know, de-awfulizing or de-catastrophizing. So we're, you know, it's very simple stuff. On one level, it's saying to ourselves, okay, well, I might currently think this is the end of the world. Is there any evidence here? We can seek evidence. It's another stress alleviating thought for that. And answer's often no. And then how can I de-awfulize? How can I de-escalate the thoughts in my mind so that I'm not denying them altogether? Because we know that when we deny our thoughts, particularly our more negative and challenging ones, sometimes they can just come at us really much harder. So it's about acknowledging, recognizing, yeah, I'm feeling pretty stressed, and this is really, I'm feeling really worried. This is really turning over in my mind. But seeing, okay, well, how can I de-escalate this? What's the thought that could help me stop blowing this out of proportion?
Okay. And so obviously you go into that in a lot more detail in the book, which I want people to read because I did really, really enjoy it.
Thank you.
Let's maybe we can move on. And I kind of feel like this is stress's evil twin sister, which is overwhelm. And particularly the sort of multitasking, which supposedly, as women, we're better at than men, which is kind of pretty much debunked really in the book. And you talk in the book about this sort of the reality of the task switching rather than the multitasking, and the kind of the associated costs of doing that. So can you explain a bit more about that, and how can we sort of move away from, or sort of train ourselves out of this sort of tendency to try and be doing too many things at once?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say, I also am guilty of multitasking. So let's just throw that one out there.
Oh yeah,
we all are. But when we're multitasking, we all think, again, myself included, that we are being very effective, right? Especially as women, you often pride yourself on being a good multitasker, can do a million things at once, and often need to, and that's the reality. But the studies now repeatedly, consistently show that what we think of as multitasking is actually called, as you said, task switching. So our brain is not doing two things at once. It is switching from one thing to the other. So, for example, if I was writing and then I checked my email briefly, my brain would go from the mode that it is in and the focus and attention and energy that it's drawing on in order to write an article, let's say, to then using similar but different sets to read the emails, to respond to the emails. So you're task switching, you're going between the two. And there is a cost, as you can imagine, between every switch. So you can think of it as you're going from, if you think of it in terms of energetics, if you're facing one way with your body and then suddenly you turn and look the other way, you are using up energy to do those turns. You are not looking in those two places at once. You are always turning. And it's incredible that our bodies can turn, that our minds can turn so quickly and so effectively. However, there is an energy cost there each time. And now the studies are repeatedly showing that that energy cost is sufficient enough that what we think of as effective when we look at multitasking is not that effective when you look at sort of staying with a single task. And so I have tried over the years my level best to train myself out of multitasking, at least when it comes to the stuff that really matters. So I still multitask in the morning when my husband and I are getting the kids ready and there's many things to do. I think that's a very natural, we're running between one thing. I might check my emails quickly if I need to, whilst trying to do something else with the kids. I do at those times. However, when I'm working on something like a workshop or an article, or as I did on the book, those are the times where I think this is where my energy needs to be at its highest. This is where my attention needs to be at its highest. And this is where I don't want to risk any of that switch cost. And so for this, if we want to look at how we can ourselves minimize multitasking, it's kind of the obvious stuff. It's about minimizing the distractions. It's looking at where and how you multitask.
Yeah.
for
So you've got
yourself.
this exercise on page 101 on the 3 questions to ask yourself to reduce overwhelm. I've got it in front of me. Do you want me to read them out, or have you got it in front of you?
You can read it out.
No, don't want to give away all your secrets, but just wanted to kind of give a flavour of some of the sort of practicalities of in the book. So your 3 questions to ask yourself to reduce overwhelm. 1, out of everything that's happening in my life right now, what will I still care about this time next year, i.e. what's essential to my well-being and what is superfluous? Number 2, what can I do to support myself right now, i.e. what do I need? And number 3, what one thing could I take off my plate to make myself feel better? So there's lots and lots of practical exercises and advice in the book. So I just wanted to share kind of a flavour of one of them.
That one, yeah. I like that one a lot. The idea with all of these is they're the kinds of things that if you were working one-on-one with a coach, you get asked some of these questions, right? So it's trying to make it a little bit more accessible. These questions I ask myself very often. I find them incredibly effective and incredibly helpful because, as to the subtitle of the book, life is incredibly demanding and incredibly busy, and there's always stuff coming at us. So it's about, what do I need? What can I take off my plate? What actually matters here? What's actually a priority? And that doesn't mean stripping away absolutely everything else that's not a priority, because for most people, they can't do that, right? In their life, it's not realistic. You can't just stop replying to the school WhatsApps or whatever, as much as we might wish we can sometimes. But it's saying, what's really going to make a difference? Say, for example, it is those school WhatsApps that are completely driving you mad, right? So maybe there is a lot of school admin, as there often is actually in summer term. Not sure when this is coming out, but we're speaking at the beginning of June. And there can be like huge amounts of admin, as well as preparing for summer holidays, where there's a huge amount of admin there as well. So if we're thinking of those the second 2 questions, what one thing can I do to support myself right now, and what one thing could I take off my plate? It might be that taking off my plate would be discussing with your partner as to exactly whose responsibility it will be to book and pay for camps. And so it may even be that it's your responsibility because they're going to do something else. But it means that almost you've taken it off your plate because you've said, I'm going to do that. That's going to get done by me. So it's not the mental load of wondering what you're going to do, where you're going to go. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to set aside 20 minutes on the Wednesday to research the camps, and then I'm going to book them. As opposed to that continuous, oh, what should I do? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, who's going to do it? Oh, so if you can make it a little bit clearer for yourself, you take away that overwhelm and that real, what I personally experience as that like continuous mental load. One thing you could do to support yourself right now, if the WhatsApps, if those groups are driving you mad, you could move them to archive so you don't actually see them, say on your WhatsApp when you open your phone. And then you commit to looking at them each evening at 6 p.m. and you check them then, so that they're not in there with all like maybe the nice messages that you've got with your friends, but they're in a separate bit. So it's thinking about things like that, like how can I reorganize things to support myself better? Because those things are not going to go away, right? We can't get rid of them. For most people, can't just go live on a beach and forget about all our responsibilities. So it's very much, and the whole book is very much about like, what can I do with what I've got? What can I do within the framework of living in this world? And what I found personally with a lot of self-help books, even with a lot of like the manifestation type stuff, was that it didn't really meet me where I was. It felt like it was written for someone who didn't have a real life and didn't have responsibilities and didn't have a real brain that, responded in, or not always the ways you want your brain to respond, and so on. What one thing can I do? Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do too much to deal with your overwhelm. Don't pick up a book like mine and
Can't boil the ocean. Let's just stop and change one thing today.
just change one thing. Because again, don't pick up a book like mine and try and do absolutely everything in there, because then you'll just feel completely overwhelmed.
Replace one problem with another.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. Well, let's move on to the third one, which is procrastination. Why do we procrastinate so much as human beings?
Okay, so we generally think of procrastination as a time management issue, but it is that, but it's also very much largely a emotional management issue. So when we procrastinate, we tend to do it on the tasks that we are intimidated by, that we are scared of failure, that we might have that fear of failure, perfectionism loop going on, where we want to do something so perfectly that we absolutely don't want to start it. We might find it incredibly boring or tiresome, might be nervous about it, and so on. So when we dig down a little bit as to why we're procrastinating on something, there's often a feeling that we are trying to avoid. And so it's actually very smart of our brains that if we say you want to write a book and you've got the idea but you haven't started it because you are so scared, understandably, to actually do the thing you want to do, and that you're scared of failure and you want it to be perfect and so on, and all those huge big emotions that come up with something like that, it's very normal and very understandable that you'd procrastinate on it, because essentially you are self-soothing. You've got those difficult emotions that are coming up or bubbling somewhere, and by saying, I'm not going to do it just yet, you soothe your system back down. The problem is, if we're always soothing our system, if we're never confronting the difficult stuff, then we don't get the shit done that we need and want to get done, especially when it comes to big, intimidating personal projects that we might be scared of. And so when it comes to navigating procrastination for yourself, I think that's something that's really worth considering and asking yourself, what emotion, what feeling am I trying to avoid or soothe here? And then again, you're meeting yourself a little bit more where you're at, and you're offering yourself that support and that sense of being held and that recognition. And then, for example, there's all sorts of ways that we can get through that emotional barrier. Maybe if it was a big project like writing a book, we could, a simple pros and cons list of that, how would I feel in 5 years if I'd started work on this book, even if it's a complete failure, versus how would I feel if in 5 years I haven't done a thing about this, So those sorts of questions where we can try and build ourselves, think about the longer term consequences of not doing the things that are important to us. And then if it's something like your taxes, or what do you procrastinate on, Emma?
Oh, so many things. Let me think. What's a really good one? I think there's a lot of admin stuff. I think because I do sort of some admin to sort of support my parents as well. So I think I'm very good at making lists and then things staying on lists. So I'm sort of trying a different tactic now where, so I've got my to-do app, and now I've set it up to sort of move stuff into this week. So trying to kind of look at everything and then be realistic about what I can get done this week. Haven't quite nailed that yet, but so coming at it from a slightly different approach of like, okay, even if I can just take one thing off the kind of the parent admin pile.
Well, it's the thing, one thing is better than no things, right? We often don't even do the one thing because we think, fuck, the list is so long, it's not even going to make
adding more things onto the list.
Well, as you'll know, I write in the book that, our to-do lists are like a game of whack-a-mole. The moment something comes off there, another thing pops back on, and we will never complete it, sadly. But okay, admin is a great example. We're looking at how we can work more with admin. say we can drill down a little bit and think, what are the particular admin tasks that I don't like? Is it the ones where I have to make a phone call and be on hold for ages? Is it the ones where I have to find the password? Like, what is the particular one that annoys me or unsettles me the most? And then avoiding that. So starting somewhere else and being like, what are the ones where I feel like I can actually do them? And then what you do is you interchange ones I feel I can do, where I'm going to get that little dopamine hit a bit quicker in my brain. So I'm going to have that reward chemical and then interspersing them with the more difficult ones. So you're sort of training your brain and training your experience, like proving to yourself that you can do the hard thing. And then, the more you do it, the more your brain will be like, well, do you remember that you did that last time?
Yeah. There was a lovely anecdote in the book where you're talking about having a coaching session with a client who'd been sort of putting off doing some school admin and like, right, let's just do it now. And they're like, I can't do that. I can't do that in my coaching session. But like, why not?
Yeah, that happens quite a lot. Or used to. I don't actually work one-on-one anymore, but yeah, which, working with someone else to get something done is so effective. It's called body doubling. And, having a partner, someone, friend, that you can partner with to get something done is incredibly effective. So, you can call your mate and say,
yeah,
just going to keep
you like half an hour.
The frog. Keep you on speakerphone while I do this bloody thing I have to do. All right. And, got a good friend, I'm sure they'd say absolutely fine.
It is very effective and surprising what you can get done when you're really in the zone. Mm-hmm. Obviously, everyone is talking about AI all the time, and the sort of we kind of loop back to the beginning about the sort of the speed and the overwhelm and the sort of just everything seems to be on this sort of ever increasing treadmill. Do you use technology to help you, and what do you think the sort of the future holds for us in terms of this kind of constantly increasing pace, the hamster wheel?
I really go up and down with this. I don't know about you, but sometimes I think it's going to make things so much faster and so much quicker and more overwhelming. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that much is going to change actually in terms of how we operate. Like, I don't see how, I mean, I might be really naive here, but how much more engaging can our phones get? Maybe that's a terrible question to ask. Maybe it's really, really fucking engaging.
Well, people who are having relationships with AI.
Yeah, embedded in our brain. But I use it to create workshop slides. So when I've written a workshop, I'll drop it in to an AI model to then condense it into slides that I can then make in Canva. And I know people do it in much smarter ways where they get it to make them for them, but I do it like that so that I can then change and go as I go along, depending on what it's taken out or not taken out. The girl that has done my socials has used it to help map out like plans and ideas. I'm not working with her anymore. I don't think I would use it going forward because I'm not sure I like the voice that it works with on social media. You start to see it as very samey, and I'm obviously a writer, so like, I'd prefer to use my own voice. I use it for travel, so I like to ask it about like destinations and what it would recommend and things like that. And that's probably it. What about you?
So I did a very interesting AI or Claude AI boot camp about 6 weeks ago, and the whole point of that was sort of kind of teaching it or kind of building a sort of an operating system in the back end so it kind of knows you and what you do and how you like to work and what your interestingly what kind of things you procrastinate about or that kind of thing. So that was quite interesting because then when you're asking it things, I find it's then coming back going, are you doing this thing because you're procrastinating about doing this other thing over here that you should be doing? I know. So that's kind of quite confronting sometimes. And I've talked in. So I wrote a blog post about sort of brain fog and perimenopause and the sort of the tools and technology that I use to sort of help with that. So I've found, so the to-do app that I use is Todoist. So that's kind of helping me. I'm a sort of a chronic list maker. So I'm trying to train myself away from writing stuff down on bits of paper when I'm writing to-do lists and keeping it all in this sort of central location. So I'm finding that's helping a bit. I use Notion quite a bit as well for sort of storing stuff around content and ideas and things I know I need to find my way back to. I'm sure there are people kind of much smarter than me who seem to connect all of these sort of different bits of technology up together so that they play nicely, but I'm definitely not there yet.
I wrote a piece, I can't remember, it was quite a while ago now, probably 3 years ago. So things have changed hugely, obviously. But I wrote a piece about how people are using AI for mental health and about where that's going to go. And I interviewed quite a few psychologists and doctors on that. And that was very interesting in terms of how, it absolutely, the dangers involved with people speaking to an AI model instead of a human. Obviously, there are huge dangers involved. But also perhaps the ways in which it could lift the load on certain practices and the NHS in terms of triaging people. So getting, those initial calls and those initial understandings of what's going on, if that could be done through AI, which, the current government has a lot of plans around this, that could hopefully make it so that, we have a huge mental health crisis within the NHS, and waiting lists are absolutely insane. And part of that is down to triaging. So I thought all of that stuff will hopefully, can give us some hope with AI over the next couple of years. There's a lot of it's taking our jobs and, so on and so forth, which is completely valid. But that there's hopefully some ways that it's going to help and support.
Well, I hope this has given everyone a flavour of the book. You can't see because you're probably listening to this, but I think I've dog-eared at least 80 pages in here, so about half the book. So that's a good sign. But Lily, where can people find you online?
You can find me I'm Lily_Silverton on Instagram, and my website is lilysilverton.com. And then I have a Substack, which is free and is called the same name as the book. So it's called Prioritize This.
Fantastic. And you've got some exercises from the book that are also available for people to try out online.
I do. So on the Prioritize This website itself, there's loads of exercises that are free for people just to access.
Okay. Fantastic. Download. So we'll put all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming to chat to me today. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Emma.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget that you can find the full back catalogue by going to www.middlingalong.com. See you next time.